The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Businesswoman and vaccine for sale whistleblower Nina Elaine Dizon Cabrera expressed frustration after being prosecuted for allegedly selling COVID vaccine slots. The Philippine National Police filed complaints in the Mandaluyong prosecutor's office against Cabrera and 2 other suspects over the vaccine slots for sale. All of them will face charges of estafa, violation of the Anti-Red Tape Act, and the Anti-Cybercrime Prevention Act. One of the suspects is Kyle Bonifacio, who previously surrendered to authorities for supposedly helping in the illegal sale of vaccine slots. For her part, Cabrera says she's completely surprised to find herself being dragged into things when she exposed this very issue last May. She adds that she has yet to receive a copy of the complaint, but is already coordinating with her lawyer on how to proceed. With the continued arrival of COVID-19 vaccines in the Philippines, the government is confident that the country's supply will normalize by June 14. Justine Ponsalang reports.
More than 3 million vaccines are expected to arrive in the country today. The first batch is Sinovac vaccines, which arrived via Cebu Pacific here in NAIA Terminal 2. Cebu Pacific Cargo Flight 5J671 landed on the tarmac at 7:24 a.m. It carried the 1 million Sinovac vaccines procured by the national government. The vaccines were received by vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. Besides the Chinese-made vaccines, tonight at 9:20 p.m., 2.2 million of the Pfizer brand donated by the COVAX facility will arrive. This totals the vaccines the country has to 12.6 million. Of more than 2 million Pfizer vaccines, Cebu and Davao will each receive 210,000 doses, while the remainder will be stored at the cold storage facility in Marikina. According to Galvez, they are expecting the arrival of 100,000 doses of Sputnik V tomorrow. He added that some 11 million vaccines will be received by the country this month and an additional 11 million by July. This is why Galvez is confident that the vaccine supply in the country will be normalized by June 14. Meanwhile, the government is eyeing to finish A4 priority group of vaccination by September. Galvez said that last night and earlier this morning, Davao already received some 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccines. The remaining 2.1 million will still arrive via NAIA, where some 210,000 will be delivered to Cebu, and the remainder 90,000 will be brought to Davao.
Health officials from Central Visayas said there are many factors behind the implementation of different testing and quarantine protocols in Cebu, and among these include humanitarian reasons. Speaking on One News' The Chiefs, DOH VII spokesperson Dr. Mary Jean Loreche reiterated the call for the national government to allow Cebu to implement its own set of protocols for arriving passengers. She explained that Cebu's protocols are proven to be effective in controlling the spread of COVID-19, which is reflected in the decreasing number of cases. Unlike in Manila, Cebu allows inbound passengers to take a swab test upon arrival and to undergo home quarantine afterwards. Loreche noted that they are also considering humanitarian reasons when they implement these protocols, as OFWs become vulnerable to mental health problems when locked up in quarantine facilities for as long as 10 days.
So for humanitarian reasons din, dumadating po yan sila with medical emergencies o kaya naman may mga families na kailangan silang dumalo sa libing, sa burol o kaya pupuntahan nila sa hospital. Ikukulong natin sila ng 10 araw. So these are factors din po kasi na dapat nating intindihin. Kung titingnan po natin, meron na po tayong mga OFWs na nagpakamatay. Meron na po tayong mga may depression. Meron mga post-traumatic stress disorders, anxiety attacks, panic attacks.
A lawmaker said that while it's important to talk about the upcoming elections, managing the COVID-19 pandemic should be a top priority. In an interview with the Chiefs, Senator Pangilinan says that if the pandemic is not managed effectively, there could be a low voter turnout in next year's polls. The worst-case scenario is a possible postponement of elections, as many Filipinos may remain afraid to leave their homes to cast their votes in fear of COVID-19.
I'd like to focus on ensuring that we get a vaccine rollout effectively undertaken, and then we can start discussing maybe the elections in 2-3 months.
Still, Pangilinan believes Filipinos, especially the youth, should be encouraged to register for the upcoming elections. The lawmaker also said young Filipinos could be game changers in 2022, as many of them tend to be critical of the administration and are more likely to support the opposition. Pangilinan noted that if all young voters registered in the last elections, ABS-CBN would have never lost its franchise, and the anti-terror law would not have seen the light of day.
Ang catalyst ng change, ang mitya ng pagbabago ay yung kabataan. Ever since, generational yan, panahon pa ni Jose Rizal, they were all students. Puro mga critical sa mga nangyayari sa bansa ang mga estudyante. So, nasa kamay nila. Kaya ako uulitin ko. Tsaka na natin pag-usapan yung mga kandidato, pag-usapan natin yung botante. Get them, lalo na yung kabataan, to register.
The government says it's not enough for the NPA to apologize and take responsibility for the deaths of 2 civilians in the landmine blast in Masbate. Authorities believe the solution is for the communist group to lay down their arms and surrender. Jenny Dongon with the details.
Wala kang kaaway, mabait ka.
The Absalon family cries for justice after the attack by members of the New People's Army that killed 2 of their loved ones. Union leader Nolvin Absalon and his cousin FEU football player Keith Absalon perished on Sunday in a mine blast in Masbate. The CPP-NPA issued a statement taking full responsibility for the incident. The group apologized, saying it was an error on their part. They also sought to extend any indemnification needed, but the Absalon family says they won't accept the apology.
Masking maghingi sa akin sila ng sorry yung hindi ko matanggap-tanggap yun. Sana magbalik loob na lang sila.
AFP spokesperson Major General Edgar Arevalo questioned the sincerity of the communist group, noting similar crimes committed in the past. Authorities note 2 civilians that were killed by an IED explosion and gunshot in Barangay del Carmen. A similar incident happened in the town of Aroroy in Masbate. 2 civilians also died. The Armed Forces of the Philippines tells the New People's Army to surrender instead.
Apology kasi is just words. Dapat isurrender nila para magawan ng karampatang parusa yung mga may gawa ng mga karumal-dumal na actions na yun.
The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or NTF-ELCAC, appealed the same.
We want a real apology. You know how a real apology looks like. They lay down their arms.
Progressive group Sentro or Sentro na mga nagkakaisa at progresibong manggagawa also condemned the violence. They described Nolvin as a reliable union leader of the Masbate Electric Cooperative employees. The group believes Nolvin and Keith became collateral damage after being mistaken by communist rebels as government troops. But the AFP is exploring all angles, noting the insurgency cases in Masbate.
Ang Masbate has been considered a hub ng mga insurgents, no? Malaya silang nakakilos dito noon pa, but especially with the geographical location of this province, madali silang nakapunta. They feel safe dito. They have well-established contacts dito.
State forces are conducting hot pursuit operations against those responsible for the attack. 2 choppers from Philippine Air Force arrived to help in the operations. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, We Are One News.
Leaders of G7 countries are set to commit to deliver at least 1 billion extra COVID-19 doses to help the world end the pandemic by 2022. Let's hear this report by Jody Schneider on Bloomberg Daybreak, Australia.
Jody, of course, this comes as we know the Biden administration is planning to buy at least half of that amount in terms of the Pfizer vaccine to share abroad.
Right, Heidi, that seems to be the theme here, that the countries that have a lot of vaccine and that have vaccinated a lot of their populations are now willing to and really are vowing to deliver these doses to countries that really need it. We're seeing, as you just noted, the G7 leaders saying 1 billion doses that should cover 80% of the world's adult population, according to this draft communique. And they say that they're going to put together this document that outlines a plan to end the pandemic by December 2022. A lot of countries would like to see it ended before then, of course, but this is, kind of in a global sense. So these are really big, bold statements, but this shows that vaccination rates in countries like the U.S. and the U.K. are rising, and therefore leaders feel that they can donate these other doses around the world, with today Pfizer confirming that they will allow these extra doses from the U.S. to go elsewhere.
Jody, we're also seeing in the draft communique that the summit will call for a new study into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic. What do we know?
Yeah, this is, of course, a topic that has been somewhat controversial. The U.S. just a few weeks ago said they were signing on to an investigation of the origins, looking at whether there was a lab that could have been involved. It had long been thought, or had sort of been thought by a number of countries, that it originated with animal to human transmission. But now there's this investigation, and by seeing this communique and saying that there's going to be an investigation in a broader sense, this gives that more credence. These investigative efforts more credence.
Luxury car manufacturer Lamborghini is aiming to have emissions from its product lineup. This as it makes the switch from screaming V12 engines to electric. Let's watch this. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We're One News.